Welcome to the Karen Kenney Show. Hey, you guys, welcome to the Karen Kenney Show. I'm so happy to be here with you for a bunch of different reasons. But the first one being is I'm just sitting here. I can't believe it's March. March 7th is just a couple of days away, and March 7th will be the 7-year anniversary of the Karen Kenney Show podcast, which is just crazy to me. This is episode 356. So that's a lot. That's a lot of years. That's a lot of shows. That's a lot of me talking, running my big mouth. And that's a lot of you guys tuning in. So just thank you so much to all of my loyal listeners. And if you're new here, welcome. I'm so happy to have you. I just can't believe so much time has passed. And, God willing, I'll be able to keep doing another 7. You know what I mean? Okay, so just wanted to say that. Thank you so much for being here. And this episode, I'm going to try to keep my thoughts straight, man, but I have so many things on my heart and on my mind these days. And I wrote down a few notes for myself, and I'm just going to do my best. But one of the things I think I want to kind of dive into this episode saying this. So much of the work that I do with people, and I work with people in a lot of different ways. You guys know that, right? I've been a yoga teacher forever. I do Thai yoga, massage, Thai yoga body work, spiritual mentor, coach, hypnotist, blah, 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 right? I do gateless writing. I'm a writer. Really, what I am more than anything is a writer and a storyteller, guest teacher, fucking retreat leader, whatever. I do a lot of shit. But so much of the work that I do is an extension of the work that I do and have done with myself, right? Towards myself. All of the tools, all of the skill sets, all the different things that I have gathered were for me first because I had to go first because I had some stuff I was navigating, right? I'm like, hello, have you met me? Right? My childhood, my life, whatever. And so one of the things that I became aware of back in the day when I started really do we want to call it a journey? I don't know, man. I was just living my life and trying to be the best person I could be and learn about myself. And so that's my point. So much of my work is built around this like self-awareness, having more self-awareness, having more self-knowledge, really understanding yourself better. Starting to know why you think what you think and say what you say and believe what you believe and hold the prejudices you hold and understand the systems that you're existing in, whether that's your family or your culture or just the systems of racism, the systems of patriarchy, the systems of whatever, right? Just understanding who you are, where you are in the world, and how you got to be and behave and believe the way that you do. And so when I'm working with others, and this is going to just stay with me because this is going to tie into today's episode. I'm just trying to make a point. So much of this, and I used to say, and I still say to all of my clients, right? So much of this is about owning both your brilliance, like knowing who you really are, knowing your skill sets, knowing your talents, knowing how loved you are, how much you matter. Notice the positive impact you have on the world, right? Owning your brilliance, but then you also have to own your bullshit. You have to own the places where you get triggered. You have to own the places where you tend to drop the ball. You have to own the places where you act like a dick, right? You know what I mean? Where you lose where you're like impatient or you're unkind or whatever, or you don't keep your word to yourself and others, whatever. We don't have to. But I would encourage you to understand yourself, to know yourself. And the more that you can do that, you can make better choices that actually represent who you are and who you really want to be. Which brings us to today. I might call this episode The Consequences of Being Yourself. And I want to talk about that word consequences, but I'm also going to tell you where the heartbeat of this came from. So many of you may know that I am a Kripalu yoga teacher. I have been a Kripalu yoga teacher. I started teaching yoga in 1999 before I was ever certified, but I became certified in 2001. And I lived at the Kripalu Center for Yoga and Health out in the Berkshires in Massachusetts, Western Massachusetts. I lived there for a month, did my YTT, my yoga teacher training there, et cetera, et cetera. And every day I would walk by this picture of Swami Kripalu, who we called Bapuji. And the word Kripalu simply means compassion. And I would see this picture of this beautiful, the grandfather. I call him one of my spiritual grandfathers because I'm a part of his lineage, the Kripalu lineage, right? And so I would see his beautiful smiling face throughout the building in different pictures, him in his saffron robes, And there was this one quote that said, and people can argue about this. I don't really care whether it's true or real or not, whether it was in the Bhagavad Gita, whether, one of the Kripalu teachers said it or Swami Kripalu said it. All I'm going to say, there was a picture of his face, and then there was this quote that said, yoga is tolerating the consequences of being yourself. And you know how we often say, oh, I saw this thing and it stopped me in my tracks. I mean, when I tell you this quote literally stopped me dead in my tracks. I'll never forget the first time I saw it. I was coming down the stairs and it like was like I'm coming down the landing and boom, it's right there in front of my face. And I literally like kind of stopped. Like when a dog hears a funny sound and he tilts his head, I kind of tilted my head and I thought, tolerating the consequences of being myself. What is that about, right? Like, what are the consequences of being myself? And I started to think about this. Now, when I talk to people about this, right, there are consequences for you being the way that you are. Now, who you truly are, underneath all your conditioning and your patterns and your behaviors and your history and your bullshit, underneath your personality and your ego and all that, I believe there is the true you, the true blue, real deal, Holyfield you, right? That to me is love. It is compassion. It's kindness. It's eternal. It never dies when your body falls away. That energy that is you, that loving source of you, it continues, right? You don't have to believe the same thing as me. I just believe this, okay? This is what I think. This is what I think. I could be wrong, and maybe one day I'll find out, right? But for now, I think underneath it all, that there is a divine spark that animates all of us, that this is who we are. Okay, having said that, okay, I'm like, underneath that is this. But on top of that beautiful divine spark of love and goodness and compassion and kindness and mercy and all those things, there is your personality. Your personality is often what I'm talking about, or what I believe this quote is talking about, the consequence of being yourself. Now, here's the thing about this word consequence. Consequences, this word has a negative connotation in our society. We often think of consequences as being something bad, right? Like, oh my God. But here's the thing, there can also be positive consequences. In fact, the word consequences is actually neutral. So, as I often like to do, you guys know I'm a little bit of a word nerd. So, here's the definition. I'm going to read it to you. I'm just holding up the paper. Consequence, noun. This is what it means: a result or effect of an action or condition. Here it is in a sentence, right? Many have been laid off from work as a consequence of the administration's policies. So it doesn't say that consequences are negative. There can also be positive consequences. And you can just switch out the word result or outcome, right? Sometimes there are positive outcomes. Sometimes there are negative outcomes. Sometimes there are negative results and sometimes there are positive results. So the word consequence, and I thought this was important in this context because the consequences of being yourself can have both positive impact on yourself and others, the world around you, the animals, whoever you're interacting with. It can also have negative consequences, right? So I wanted to get that clear as we move forward, that consequences aren't just negative. They can be both. So a lot of times, and the reason why I'm talking about this is I don't think we spend enough time thinking about the consequences of us being ourselves in the way that we are in the world, the way that we talk, the way that we think, the way that we speak, the way that we believe, the way that we vote, the where we spend our money, how we do things. So many of us are on autopilot. So many people aren't thinking about things. They just are in their little world on their, when we were kids, we would, because I was, I always wanted like tomboy, like, I guess you could just call them toys, but toys that back in the day leaned towards like being a quote unquote tomboy or whatever, right? So I liked G.I. Joe dolls. I didn't like dolls and stuff. Like I wanted like Tonka trucks and I wanted like race car tracks and like I wanted all that stuff, right? And back in the day, you would have these little race car tracks and they would have like little grooves in them. And so your cars would like zip around on the tracks, but they would stay like, but every once in a while it would go, and it would like go flying. And if you've ever had one, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It would go flying off the track. You know what I mean? And so, wait, how did I get on this? How did I get on talking about it? Oh my God. I'm gonna have to pause because I gotta think about this for a second. Jesus. And I'm back. I just remembered what the frig I was talking about. Okay. So sometimes we just kind of get into this track, this groove, and we don't question anything. We don't look around. We're just like, oh, that's just how I am. That's just how they are. That's just how he is or she is. And we don't think about, right? We don't question things. We just kind of do the same shit over and over and over again, but not realizing. I think of it like when there's a boat and you're driving on a boat, and a boat always leaves a wake behind it in the water, right? Even if you're paddling, if you ever like if you canoe, even if you don't have a motor, right? And you paddle that canoe, when you look back, that little paddle being in the water and that stroke, it causes a little like swirl, a little eddy in the water, right? It's like woo. So who and how we're being, it has consequences, both positively and negatively. And we have to be aware of this. And so I'm going to give you a few stories and a few examples of why this has kind of been on my mind. You know, I talk about like when I'm talking with people about creating a daily spiritual practice, right? I don't get too hung up on exactly what they're doing. I'm like, hey, we create a DSP, we create a daily spiritual practice. Because when you do a daily spiritual practice, when you start your day being more aware and being more conscious and having a conscious connection to something greater than you, however you might define that, your higher power, your highest self, Mother Nature, the universe, God, source, the divine intelligence, the loving intelligence, I don't care what people call it. When you start your day in your awareness of relationship to that, you spend time in meditation or contemplation or prayer or just quiet time, right? You're doing things to like, again, people's DSP can look 1,000 different ways, but you're spending time in the morning doing, morning pages. You're writing out longhand. You're starting to kind of get your mind right. You're starting to get on board with the kind of day you would like to create and what you're going to get done and who you might come across, right? That's why, I say that prayer every day. Have me go where you would have me go. Have me do what you would have me do. Have me say what you would have me say. And to whom, please use me. Try to put yourself in service to something higher than you, to be used by a greater force, like a force of love, to be in service to love. Okay. Because doing that first thing in the morning, before you get on your phone, before you turn on the news, before you read the newspaper, before you start to become bombarded by the horrors and the tragedies that are going on out there, right? And yes, of course, there are some good, beautiful, and holy things and people and stuff happening, but those don't sell papers, those don't get clicks. So a lot of our news that we're being bombarded with is negative and scary because, oh, and your nervous system gets hijacked and you're just exhausted before you even go out the door. So having a daily spiritual practice, a DSP, right? And when I talk to my clients about this, it helps to set you up for success. It helps to point you in the right direction, get you on the right track. You declare this is the kind of day I'm going to have, and I'm going to get my rhyme right, and I'm going to do my best to do that. Again, not always successful, but you're way better off than having not done it, right? When you start your day with a little gratitude and a little insight and a little like awareness beyond just you and your own world, right? Like, hello, we're all connected to each other. This is how we get through this thing together. Okay. You start your day like that. It's the difference I often say about going out into the world in an inspired way versus going out and inflicting yourself on other people. I'm going to say that again. It's the difference between going out into the world in a more inspired way, right? Versus going out and inflicting yourself on other people. Because if you're not aware of who you are and how you are, if you've got some sort of an attitude problem, if you're always angry or always complaining or always miserable or always just like, whatever, if you're always greedy, if you're always in a place of expectation or privilege or what's the word I'm looking for? What's the word I'm looking for? Entitled. Oh my fucking God. People who move through the world in such an entitled way. You know what I'm saying? Oh my God. You don't realize there are consequences to you being you. And the way that you are each day when you go out into the world, and even if you stay at home and work online, right? There are consequences to, let's say you're somebody who Doesn't I'm not judging people who don't clean. Everybody is different. Everybody has different levels of comfort and neatness around things like that. But there are consequences to not cleaning up. This is how you start to get bugs or cockroaches sometimes, or like, if you never like cleaned up after your dog or your cat, you'll end up with shit and piss everywhere in your house. You know what I'm saying? So there are consequences to the choices that we make and who we are and how we are. We're constantly teaching people. We are constantly demonstrating what we believe by what we do and don't do, by what we say and don't say, by our actions, right? Okay. Now, I saw this really funny. Now, I often do episodes because something will keep coming to me in different forms, whether it's from the universe, universal signs, kismet, what do they call it? Coincidence, whatever people want to call it. Again, I don't get hung up on it. But I saw this really funny meme. And on it, just imagine there's a light switch on the wall and there's a finger going towards the wall. And the light switch right now is in the on position, it's up. And on the up position are the words this: contribute to society. And in the off position, it says menace to society. I thought this was so freaking funny, right? And it's like, yeah, we're going to choose. Like, when people say, oh, he woke up today and he chose violence, right? Well, so in each moment, right, each day, we are deciding, how am I going to be? Again, am I going to go out into the world, right, and own my brilliance and move in an inspired way? Or am I going to go out into the world in my bullshit, in my patterns, in my trauma, in my stuff, right, in my wounds? It's okay if you have wounds, but if you're not aware that you have a wound that is bleeding out, it will have a consequence ultimately, right? But sometimes your blood is getting all over everybody else. Okay. So it's like, am I going to go out into the world in that more inspired way? Or am I going to go out and be a menace to society? Am I going to inflict myself on people? And it's not always in these grandiose ways, right? You ever hear that phrase, death by 1,000 paper cuts, right? If you're living with somebody who is in their own insecurity, so they're jealous or they're whatever, so they'll just take these little pot shots at you, or they'll start to do weird shit like looking through your phone or like, now look, I get sometimes that's necessity because you understand that somebody's doing something dangerous or whatever. I'm not here to judge people's actions. I'm just saying there are times when we know that like something is up and it's like, right? But people's insecurity also has consequences. I got a story about that for another time, right? But if you don't check yourself, you're not only going to wreck yourself, you're going to wreck other people that are around you. And this is why I often say to like parents, especially if I'm working with a parent, I'm like, one of the greatest gifts you can give your kids is to get your shit together, is to know yourself, to know your history, to know your trauma that has been passed down from generation to generation. Your happiness, your sense of self, your sense of safety, your sense of knowing who you are, your sense of feeling a connection to your history and your people and your ancestors and your past, right? To be grounded. And even if your origin, your family of origin was a shit show, you can get out of that once you're an adult most of the time. Not everybody can, I understand that, but most people can, and they can start to live differently and choose differently and behave differently, right? And so that meme was making me think about this, right? Am I going to be a contribution? Am I going to contribute to society? Or am I going to be a fucking menace to society? And I got to tell you, there's a lot of people out in the world right now who are being a menace to society. And whether or not, like, I'm just thinking about, right, our this current administration and thinking about Trump. I got to say this. Whatever you feel about that, I know strongly how I feel. And this to me, just from not even a political point of view, just from a personal human, like in the work that I do, observing human behavior, this is a person who has been inflicting himself on others for a really long time. This is a person who does not seem self-aware at all. Or the story they tell themselves about who they think they are is cognitive dissonance there. But I'll tell you this, when a person like that makes a decision to go to war, without not even going through the correct channels, just illegally starting a war for his own means, whatever. And then you bomb a girls' school and you kill over 150 people, mostly children, mostly little girls. This is a person who is inflicting themselves on the world. This is a person there are consequences to that person being who and how they are. And I don't know about you, But I don't want to be that kind of person. I want to be able to own my shit. I want to become more aware of my blind spots and know what pushes quote unquote my buttons and what gets me scared or anxious or worked up or whatever, and not showing up from a place of love. I want to understand the ways that I go into fear or lack or scarcity or whatever, what my patterns have been. Now, sometimes we need help, right? Figuring that stuff out. That's why there are counselors and coaches and mentors and therapists and whatever. This is why we have support groups like Al-Anon and AA and Overeaters Anonymous and this, that, and the other thing. That's why there are communities like the Nest, like I run, right? Sometimes we need help kind of navigating this whole being human experience because it's fucking hard. It's hard. But there's only so many excuses you can make, right? Like I said to a client the other day, trauma explains a lot of things, right? Our trauma, our stories, what happened, it explains how we got here, why we might kind of be the way that we are. But it does not excuse, once we understand and once we know, what we do going forward. We can't just keep blaming it on our poor childhood and the thing that happened to us. At some point, and I understand we're all existing also within systems. I'm not saying that everybody's starting at the same place or has the same resources. But I am saying that when we start to get little glimpses of, oh, when I do this, that happens. When I say that, that happens. When I say to do this or not do that or whatever, me being myself, it has consequences, both positive and negative. If you think about somebody who's an alcoholic, especially if they're a parent or in a marriage or a relationship or a family, or they just have friends who care about them, right? And they're starting to drink too much and it starts to get out of control. And now they're driving drunk and they're doing things, right? They're not only having consequences on their own mental well-being, sometimes their jobs, sometimes their families, sometimes their relationships, they lose those. And there are consequences that they personally pay. But there's also other consequences. I remember when I was a bartender and I would see people come in and day after day after day, just drinking themselves slowly to death. And I'm not saying like, oh, poor me, because I was, had to see that. But I will say, as a sensitive person, it weighed heavy on my heart. It's why I stopped bartending. It was one of the reasons I'm like, I don't want to come here every day and watch people slowly kill themselves, watch people get sloppy, watch people get belligerent and mean, watch people, sitting at the bar, coming there every day because they're deathly lonely, but they don't talk to anybody about it, whatever, whatever, whatever. And again, I'm not judging people who drink. These are just examples of how I kind of see it. And one of the most powerful things that I saw this week that kind of points to this consequence of being yourself. Now, this video might be months old, a year old, I don't even know. I just saw the video and it just was like getting punched in the face. And it's a video of this guy, and I tried to find the real story or the backstory. I see different people saying different things about it. But I will say this. There's apparently a woman, she might be a woman of color. She's standing on her porch or she's in her yard. And apparently this guy has done this before. So there's a white guy driving down the street in a pickup truck. She's just in her yard, whatever. Now, he obviously has a problem with her. Some stories said it was because of her bumper stickers. Some stories said it was because she was black. Some stories said it was because he was a neighbor and they don't get, whatever. I don't really know the reason, and it doesn't, on some level, it doesn't matter to the point that I'm trying to make. So he's driving down this quiet little residential street in his truck. She's in her yard or on her porch. You don't know because the vantage point is from her camera. She's filming, and she's filming this guy as he's driving down the street. And as he gets close to her house and he sees her, he basically turns his head to look at her and he flips her the bird, right? He does the fuck you with his finger. Okay. Because he's distracted, because he's caught up in being himself, which is I'm going to be this guy that flips off this woman who's in her yard or whatever, he ends up swerving his car. He hits his truck. He scrapes up a parked car, bounces up onto the sidewalk, and then slams into a concrete wall. And I'm watching this, and the whole time I'm just cringing. I'm cringing from everything, from the fact that this woman was filming him, which tells me this has probably happened before. She's been harassed, or he's mean or out of control and whatever. She's documenting it for a reason. That was like, oh man, that hurt my heart. Then I see what he does, and I'm like, oh my God, can you imagine being this woman and having to deal with this shit? Now, again, I don't know the real story of what's going on, but I'm just, from what I saw. Then I watch him wreck another person's car that's just parked on the street. Then he could have hit somebody if anybody had been walking on that sidewalk. Thank God there wasn't. And then he slams his own truck into the car. And you know what he says? First of all, and I don't usually say this word, but I'm going to say it just so you get the this is not a word for whatever. I swear like a sailor, but this is just isn't something that what I tend to say. But this is what he says. Puts it in park, he swings open his door and he screams, "God damn it." And the second thing he screams in her direction is, "I fucking hate you." And then he says again, "God damn it." And now he's having a tantrum like a toddler. He's like stomping his feet. And she just very calmly says, "Are you okay?" And he yells, "No." And now he's walking in the street looking at the car he just hit. And she says, "Are you hurt?" And he says, "Yes." And she says, "Physically?" And he walks away. And what I hear is, "I give up." Somebody else said somewhere that they interpreted it as, "I need help." But I heard, "I give up." And then he just kind of like says, "I'm going to fucking die." And I'm just like, oh my God. This right here encapsulates the consequences of being yourself because he had no self control. He felt the need to flip this person off. And some people are like, oh, it's instant karma, whatever. I found no joy in this video at all. The whole thing just made me sad. It was just like such a shit show of dysregulation. And this is what I'm talking about. If you have no self knowledge, if you have no self awareness, if you don't understand the workings of your own mind, like seriously, I'm hitting my body right now. We are operating heavy machinery. You should understand how your brain works. You should get a book at the library. And if you can't read, listen to it on tape or something like that. But start to understand how your body and your brain and your nervous system works. Learn a little bit about trauma. Learn a little bit about our history. Learn a little bit about like just all of it, right? Like learn about how we find ourselves where we are at this particular point in time. But start with yourself. Start with yourself. Because whether we like it or not, there are consequences of us being ourselves. And we don't just inflict it on us. Animals pay the price all the time for people being themselves. Animals pay the negative consequences of people deciding that they don't have value, that they're products that we wear and that we eat and that we murder and that we use for entertainment, right? There are consequences to us just being here alive on the planet and what we're doing to the planet and the environment and Mother Nature. Our choices matter. Our self-knowledge matters. Our self-awareness matters. I could literally go on and on and on about this, right? But it's so important, you guys. Am I going to contribute to society or am I going to be a menace to society? And when you don't know yourself, when you don't understand the consequences of you being you, right? There are positive consequences. Your brilliance, own that. That's beautiful. But do not turn a blind eye to the negative consequences, right? Going out and inflicting yourself on others. You're also inflicting yourself sometimes on yourself. Now, I can't make people want to do that kind of work. I just say I'm here when people are ready to do that work. I'm easy to find, KarenKenney.com. This is the work that I continue to do on myself because I got to keep an eye on my own nonsense and my own bullshit. You know what I mean? And if I have a blind spot, I expect my friends, my sweetie, my best friends, right, to go like, hey, like compassionately, right? And like do it kindly or I'm not interested. But you can say anything to me. It's about the way that you say it to me, right? If I know that you're on my team, if I know you're on my side and you're trying to be helpful, I can hear just about anything. So here's the thing, you guys. That's where I'm going to leave it with. I got to run. I got to go. I have a client actually. I got to go. I got to go give a Thai yoga massage. So just thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being a part of my podcast family. Yay for 7 years. I'm so excited. I hope something that I shared from my heart today also lands in yours. If it was helpful in some way, share it with somebody else or send up a flare. Let me know. Because I got to tell you, sometimes having a podcast or a newsletter or whatever, you're just kind of sending it out into the ethers and you don't know. Like yeah, I could look at my stats and be like, oh, this many people listen, but I don't know how long they're listening. I mean, I guess I could really do the deep dive. But it's so nice to feel like there's a connection in a community. So if I share something and it resonates with you or it makes you think or you go, oh, or even if you disagree a little bit, whatever, right? It's nice. Send up a flare. Let me know. Reach out and talk to me and let me know. I bump into people out in public sometimes. I have no idea that they listen to the show, and then all of a sudden they'll say, oh, I listened to the show. Like hearing that, it's like it's nice. It's like getting a little warm hug, right? It's sweet. It's like, oh, maybe this is landing for people or making a difference or whatever. And we all want to know that, don't we? We all want to know that something that we're doing or how we're trying, it matters. It's not why we do it. I'm not doing it for the likes, the clicks, the follows, the whatever, but it is nice to know that it is landing in people's hearts. So I appreciate you so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Wherever you go, may you leave yourself in the animals, in the environment, and the other people that you come into contact with better than how you found them. Wherever you go, may you and your energy and your love and your presence, may it be a positive consequence. May it be a blessing. Bye.